How's everybody doing? It's Captain Brian Brown, and I'm here at KentuckyLake.com, tip of the week, and today is going to go over hooks and the right ones to choose for what baits, the correct size for each bait. With the trips I do and the tournaments I fish, I see it all the time with co-anglers and new people that are in the boat wanting to always choose the wrong hook, or we're in a tournament and the guy sets a hook on a fish and it's coming and he loses it and looks at it, man, I had a great hook set and I don't know why it came off. Well, a lot of times we start looking at what he's using, and he might have the right bait, the right plastic, but he's got the wrong size hook for the piece of plastic he's fishing. So a little overview on hooks. I mean, we'll kind of start out with, in the beginning you basically had your straight shank hooks or a sprout hook. It was just a straight shank hook, got a couple barbs on it, try to hold the baits on, and that's basically what you had. A straight shank hook has the biggest bite and throat of any hook out there. There's nothing between the point of the hook and the shank. It's all open, versus nowadays we've got what they call an offset, or here's even a bigger one I can show you. An offset. Well, now you've got the point of the hook, and you got this gap in here that the fish's mouth has got to get down around before he gets hit, where this doesn't have any of that. It's all hook, all open right there. And so a lot of your flippers, a lot of the guys, a lot of professionals, this is the hook they're going to go to 90% of the time if they can. Now, as plastics have kind of come along, and the new designs that are out there, you don't have just any one size worm anymore. You've got your frogs, you've got flipping baits, you got your 10-inch worms that can be anywhere from smaller diameter as this up to they can be big around as your thumb. You've got your fluke style baits, you've got your tubes, and tubes again can be anything from a little brown tube maybe the size of your pinky to one as fat as your thumb, and they're all going to take a different hook to get through there, because what happens is so many people pick too small of a hook for the bait they're using, and even a design of the hook. Just say, take this 10-inch worm. I've got a 5/0 offset hook in that worm, and that's what that looks like. You got a 10-inch worm. There's a lot of worm there. The bigger you go up in your hooks, the longer the hooks also get. So here's a 3/0 compared to the 5/0. That makes a huge difference in there. You can see the throat opening here is not nearly as big as it is going across here. So you put the same worm up against that hook, and you can see the difference on where the back of the hook even is. You're losing almost half to 3/4 of an inch where the bite of that smaller hook is compared to where this big 5-inch. Now, you don't want to get too big in a hook. You don't want to take, say, this 4/0 offset hook, and you don't want to be putting it in some little worm like that. And you see how much bigger that is, because what happens is it kills the action. So there's a tricky part in trying to balance what size hook you're going to use and what plastics. And for the most part, the two biggest keys are, you want to have it so it's a small enough hook to give a good presentation, a lifelike presentation, but yet a big enough hook that you've got enough gap that when a fish bites it, that it'll actually get hooks in it. Just like on this fluke style bait. Here's a regular offset. There's a 5/0 offset hook inside a fluke style bait, and you can see, and this one doesn't have an open belly on it, that there's not a whole lot of gap down in here anymore. So when a fish bites that, that's what it's looking like. There's not a whole lot of bite left in here for that fish to get a hold of the hook. Now, you get these new designs in them, and look at the belly on that hook there. You've got a lot of hook for when that bait comes sliding down and pushes down. You've got a lot of hook there for that fish to get a hold of and get up in that fish's mouth. And that's a big key to it. If you get too small of a hook, you're just not going to be able to get a bite in there. You get too big of a hook again, you're just going to kill the action. There's so many different hooks for each particular design and technique out there. Flipping, for instance, again, your straight shank hooks are always going to be your best hookup percentage. Like I said, they started out with just these with the little sprout hooks on them. They've gotten a lot more technical. Guys now, they'll send you either like this KO hook that has a piece of shrink tubing on it, where when you hit it with some heat, it'll pinch down and put its own little barb on there. You can actually buy shrink tubing and get, if you've got some sprout hooks that just have the little barbs, you can get some shrink tubing, take it, cut a little 45-degree angle on there, slide it over the hook, and then just hit it with the shrink tubing or the heat, and that shrink tubing will shrink down on there. You can see the barbs on this one. If I can pick it up again. You can see these barbs right here that are holding that shrink tubing on, and then when you hit it, it'll actually make this in a nice point on a 45 and hold that bait on there. Other companies, like here's a Gamakatsu's heavy cover flipping hook, and they wrap a little piece of a metal barb on here, so it's already on there for you, and that's what you want to hold your bait on. And a lot of the hooks have actually come around that way as a way to design to hold the bait better. This one here is a G-Lock from Gamakatsu, and if I take this bait off here, you can see how much more defined this little cup is in here, and that's to hold the bait on, so the fish can't pull it down as easy. They've also got, and here's a good one for frogs. There's multiple different frog hooks out there, and this one isn't really technically a frog hook, but it's one that I've found that I really love for the frogs. Again, it's an offset, but it's called by Gamakatsu, this is a deep throat offset. And you can see the different bend in it. Most of them are going to have a round bend, some sort of round bend. This one's got more of almost a 90-degree bend to it. And the cool thing I like about that is when it's in that frog, that thing lays against the entire back of that frog, and it rides so nice along there, and it's just got a much longer hook point to it. And what I mean by that is, from when a fish bites it and what's holding that fish on, from the throat of this hook right here, the throat area, to the point is so much deeper on this that once a fish gets a hold of it and you got that in there, it's that much farther a fish has to try to work to get it out. So when he's out there jumping around on you, he definitely can't throw it as much. You've also got your circle hooks and your drop shot hooks and different ones like that. Here's this one here's a Gamakatsu drop shot hook. It's got basically on the Kale. Anybody who's done a lot of live baiting, they know what a Kale hook looks like. It's basically on that design. You got a little bit of an offset drop shot hook there, and then they also got what they call a wacky rig hook. You can get it weedless or not weedless, but these are all for like the wacky rig. And anybody that's throwing a wacky rig worm, you just hook it in the middle there. But there's different designs there, depending on what bait you got. If you're fishing in weeds, or what everybody's got a design they like in a hook that they think hooks up better for them and holds the bait better for them. And there's certain techniques you might be doing the drop shot or doing a wacky rig, but in certain situations one hook really may work better than another. Here with the tubes, my favorite hook to use when flipping a tube is just a regular offset worm hook. But they've also got, Gamakatsu's also got one called a skip gap. And what this does, this is what it looks like when it's rigged up, is it helps that tube. You got your tube and it locks on this corner right here, but it also pinches it up right here against the tube. Right here, it's pinching up right in there against that tube. So it works really good for skipping under docks. And anybody that's skipped docks before, even with, and I've done it with the regular offset hook, what'll happen is that it'll wind up pulling down over that, and then when you skip it underneath there, you just got a big ball on there. And that's a new hook to try to keep that from happening. But just try to, the best you can, again, the two things you're looking for are keeping a big enough bite, the area between the plastic and the hook. You got to have the correct bite there, because again, if you don't have it, you're going to have a hook that's too small. That worm comes down, there's no bite there. If you got a big enough bite, that fish bites it, he's got all kinds of room here. That this where the plastic can get pushed down. He's got all kinds of throat and bite there to get a hold of that hook. The other thing you don't want to do though on too big of a hook again is you don't want to use, like say on this drop shot, that's going to keep, you got a nice smaller hook on there, it's the upper part of the body, it's going to let all that tail have action. If you were to take this off and wind up using let's just go with this, it's just a 3/0 hook, that's all this is, a 3/0 offset hook. You take this in this little drop shot worm here, get it rigged on here, and it's going to take up, you can't really even rig it really right, but it takes up so much more space in that little body. There's not that much room on that worm, and when you've got that on light line, it's going to kill the action. It's just going to want to take that worm and just tip it over. And on a drop shot, you want to keep that worm out there nice and straight. So it's a critical key. Those are the two components when it comes to getting hooks and looking for a hook, and when you're rigging your stuff up, is make sure you've got enough bite in the hook and the plastic, and that you've got you don't have an oversized hook to kill the action of the lure, and you don't have too small of a hook so that when the fish bites it, they don't ball it up, and because that's what will happen. You get too small of a hook on there, fish bites down on it, they've got it for a second, but the bait gets all balled up on it, and then all of a sudden when you're fighting it, they come off because they really never got the throat of the hook, in the meat of the mouth, and then you're going to be crying and wishing you had a bigger hook in there. And then hopefully with these tips here, you'll put more fish in the boat because you're going to have the right hook for the piece of plastic that you're using. So that's your Kentucky Lake Tip of the week. This is Captain Brian Brown. Look forward to seeing you on the water. Tight lines.